It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5 o'clock. Good morning. It is Tuesday, January 21st. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. A mix of sun and clouds today. The high is only going to be 20, though. Tonight and overnight clear, low 11. And then Wednesday, sunshine, a tad bit warmer. The high going to be 21. If you are walking out the door with us right now, it is 13 and partly cloudy in Amityville out on Long Island. It's 11 and partly cloudy in Clifton over in New Jersey. And it is 12 and clear right outside our Midtown studios. So as you can hear, you have to really do some bundling up today, especially if you're somebody who's doing some sort of outdoor commute that involves a bus or a subway. We're going to see the coldest temperatures over the next couple days that we have seen in probably almost 2 years, maybe longer than that. High temperatures may not leave the teens today and tomorrow. Actually, the next time we're going to see above freezing probably won't be until Friday into Saturday. So the good news is if you're not somebody who works outdoors, you just need to get from point A to point B. You just, put on some gloves, a heavy-duty jacket, a hat, the works, you're good to go. But if you're somebody who, of course, who works outside, like this tow truck driver, he says, just prepares for the bad weather.
Fingers get numb, feet get cold, and it gets rough. Move quick. Again, we got, hand warmers and stuff like that, but for the most part, I do move pretty quickly, so I'm back in the truck and not freezing.
Now, the good news, I saw, for the most part, clear roads this morning, because there's always that worry when you get a snowstorm like we did on Sunday. It wasn't a big one, but if it melts a little bit, the streets freeze over, and then there's some slick spots. But the acting city sanitation commissioner saying that the road's looking pretty good. They were doing some salting overnight. I saw in New Jersey they were doing some salting as well. Yesterday, of course, was a day off for most of us. We were here, of course, because we were here to cover the inauguration. But the kids, they were out doing things like sledding.
Feel good. I think I'm wearing like 3 or 4 layers. I think I'm wearing like 3 layers.
Yeah, that's probably the good thing, 3 layers. Today, a code blue in effect across New York City. If you see a homeless person outside or a person in distress, and by the way, I saw this on the way into work. I saw a guy lying on the ground, and I called 311. Now I know how quickly they got to this person, but I was worried that, out in these elements, it could be bad for them. So someone will come and get that person the proper resources they need to warm up. So if you do see somebody out in the streets, especially overnight into this morning, call 311. Let them know. They will send cops over, somebody else over.
My winter boots. I've got a jacket under this jacket. And then I have my hat.
Yeah, that's a woman who was out early this morning. Of course, hypothermia is the big risk on cold nights. Mayor Adams says the city's ready for this extreme cold in the Big Apple over the coming days.
Check on neighbors. Make sure that they know about any heating conditions, that they can call 311 to report the lack of heat in their buildings. But we have to be here for each other.
To try and keep the subways, trains, buses moving, the MTA says they've been de-icing equipment, ready to deal with icing conditions following, of course, the snowstorm. And then this morning, the city actually has suspended alternate side street parking for today. So Emergency Management Commissioner Zach Eiskol says that the code blue being issued is out there. And like I did, if you see someone, don't hesitate to call. So if they get more than one call, that's fine.
These temperatures are a very serious concern, especially for vulnerable populations. We will be working closely with our Department of Social Services to ensure that homeless New Yorkers have access to shelter.
Cold temperatures, high winds could be dangerous, and we're doing everything possible to protect New Yorkers. We're asking New Yorkers to call 311 if they need assistance for heating or pipe freezing.
And this freeze that we're feeling is being felt across the country, snowstorms across the country, causing some big delays if you're trying to fly out. People trying to fly home yesterday found that it was hard to do so.
8 states have a heavy snow and ice forecast for late Monday into Wednesday, with winter storm warnings and advisories in place. American Airlines is waiving fees and posting travel alerts for roughly 40 states. Delta Airlines has a Gulf Coast winter weather advisory through Wednesday posted, while JetBlue, United, and Southwest are also notifying customers of potential delays and cancellations. I'm Mark Mayfield.
WABC News Time 5:04. Did you watch any of the inaugural balls last night? Of course, Melania, the now First Lady, changed that dresses from earlier in the day, and that was, can we use the word controversial? I don't know, that might be the wrong word. But that hat, everybody was talking about the hat that she had down during the inaugural, down over her eyes, over her ears. Was she sending some sort of message to Americans, or was it just high fashion? Probably never know the answer to that. But boy, was President Trump busy on his first day in office. And it wasn't even, of course, his first full day, because he took the oath of office around noon yesterday. But he bolted into his first day in office with a show of executive force, signing orders intended to end the right to citizenship by birth, force federal workers back to the office, grant TikTok a reprieve from that forced shutdown, trying to showcase his desire to go around Congress and reshape everything from the economy to energy policy. There were so many things signed yesterday that I had spent a fair amount of time today trying to figure out what had been signed and what it will mean. Will they hold up these signatures on these pieces of paper, or will they be end up in courtrooms somewhere? The new president's flashy signing ceremonies highlighted this long day of what we've known, come to see as classic Trump showmanship. It kept him, of course, at the center of the festivities yesterday. He was in front of the cameras all day long. It looked like I was tired just watching him. I can only imagine how tired he was at the end of the day. He delivered not one, but two lengthy speeches on Capitol Hill before holding that glitzy congressional luncheon. He then used a rally at the Capital One Arena as a backdrop for some of his signing of some of these declarations, holding up an order that pulled the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement. And the crowd there, the crowd had been there all day long. They went crazy when he did that. And there's more. WABC News Time last night at the White House. The president spent about 45 minutes taking dozens of questions from reporters in the Oval Office as he pardoned or commuted the sentences of more than 1,500 January 6 rioters, including those convicted of assaulting law enforcement officers and seditious conspiracy. And then he signed another swath of orders overhauling the federal government's treatment of immigrants and withdrawing the country from the World Health Organization. Now, what's not clear is which of these Trump's list of executive actions will have immediate impact, which are purely symbolic, and whether Congress or the courts can limit their impact. I can't answer any of those questions this morning, but as of 9 o'clock last night, and what a long day it was for the president, Trump had signed dozens of executive actions with the possibility he could sign more later Monday night. President Trump spent the day talking to his supporters following taking that oath of office. He said he cut some topics from his inaugural address, including the January 6 Capitol rioters and pardons that were issued by former President Biden. Now, this was the speech that he gave outdoors after he gave the indoor speech.
And I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, it's action, not words that count. And you're going to see a lot of action.
So he also noted that the cold weather was the reason that they had moved the inaugural indoors. I mean, it was bitterly cold there yesterday. He said, you know what, they should probably do it inside all the time. He chose not to mention some topics because in his inaugural address, because he said Melania, his wife, told him not to. So when he did the second, essentially, speech, he mentioned all the things that he said he could not mention in the first one.
Why are we trying to help a guy like Millie? Why are we doing Millie? He was pardoned. What he said. Terrible what he said.
Yeah, so the president there talking about the fact that former President Biden just issued these preemptive pardons to General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and members of the January 6 Congressional Committee.
He spared them, but they didn't spare the people that they killed.
And Trump afterwards lamenting what he says is a lack of bipartisanship in Washington, something he says he wants to change.
I wish we could have had a better relationship between Republicans and Democrats. I was with Senator Schumer. I said, Chuck, I think it's time we all start getting along a little bit because it doesn't make sense.
And he brought up the issue of the election integrity, saying the voting policies in states like California allow for cheating.
This is like California, we did great, but when they send out like 38 million ballots, nobody knows where the hell they're sending them, and then they come pouring back.
So there he talked to his supporters. Then he started, this fury of signing executive orders, one pardoning those 1,500 people convicted in the January 6 riots. In fact, 2 of them have already been released from prison this morning. They're already out. Gabriel Garcia is a member of the Proud Boys who posted a message before that it was time to stack those bodies in front of Capitol Hill. That's what he said before the January 6th. He celebrated the pardon.
And I'm glad now that we finally have a president, not just because of the pardon state, but I have a feeling that our country is going to be a lot better under Trump once again.
Yes, so I imagine some of those others that are behind bars will be set free later today. President Biden freezing all government hiring, ordering federal workers to go back to the office full time now.
The hiring freeze was included in a raft of executive orders that Trump signed on day one, barring all agencies from filling vacancies and ordering them to make more efficient use of what they have. The freeze doesn't apply to the military, immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. In another memo, Trump said that agencies need to end remote work policies as soon as possible. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Now, if you're saying this is all dizzying, so many things happened, yeah, it kind of is. I mean, so much on the first day. President Trump taking his first actions, signing a proclamation regarding how flags are flown for inauguration.
Lastly, we have a proclamation ordering on all future inauguration days, including this inauguration day, that flags shall be flown at full mast. Very important.
Former President Biden had ordered flags to be flown at half-staff for 30 days in honor of former President Carter following his death. Trump also signed executive actions regarding presidential appointments in a ceremony at the U.S. Capitol. Let's see. Like I said, it's so much to get around. Oh, so let's talk about his speech a little bit, because there were, for a lot of people, said he sounded kind of Reagan-esque during this speech. There were moments he sounded like Ronald Reagan. I kind of felt the same way.
From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer.
But he also talked about the fact that it's time for a tide of change, and he says that will sweep the country during the next 4 years.
Sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before.
And no doubt if you were watching, and I'm sure most of you were, you had to wonder what President Biden and Kamala Harris were thinking as they sat in that hall in the rotunda yesterday, as Trump first insulted them and then undid or promised to undo a lot of what they had done. So he talked a little bit about here the response to the disasters and the hurricanes in North Carolina and the wildfires, and he said he would have done a better job and will do a better job.
They're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting.
And Trump thanking black and Hispanic voters for their support.
Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor. But in his honor, we will strive together to make his dream a reality.
Yeah, all right, we're going to get more into this. We'll also get the latest. Remember, you saw that moment with Carrie Underwood yesterday. We'll tell you what she had to say when the music didn't work for her when she was set to sing at the inauguration yesterday. We'll get into that as well. But first, 5:15, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. What a game last night, Justin Ellick.
Yeah, how about that, man? I mean, Ohio State jumping out to that big lead and Notre Dame roaring back there. But it is Ohio State that prevails 34-23 against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to reach the top of the college football mountaintop and their 6th national title in school history, the first in a decade for the Buckeyes. The championship victory makes OSU the champion of the sport's first 12-team playoff, just as they were champions of its first 4-team tournament a decade ago. Buckeyes were on cruise control, and then suddenly Notre Dame came to life, trailing 31-7, and D scored 2 touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions to make it a one-score game late in the fourth quarter, but alas, Ohio State was the better team. The Buckeyes outgained Notre Dame 445 yards to 308. Will Howard completed his first 13 passes and never really got stopped. The Buckeyes punted a grand total of one time. They rolled through 4 games in the new expanded playoff. Well, great timing for Ohio State. The tournament swelled to a dozen teams in a year that they didn't even play for the Big Ten title by an average score of 36-21 in those 4 games. Ohio State was seeded 8th, but the seeding was pretty much meaningless. That's something they got to look at for next year's tournament. The worst seed won every game in the quarterfinal and semifinal rounds, and the Buckeyes dominated in this title game showdown of number 7 and number 8.
I kind of like this. I like this new...
I like the 12-team. I definitely like the 12-team playoff. It's just the seeding they got to figure out.
Yeah.
I mean...
All right, but I thought it was fun, the whole process.
But early on, you had Oregon. They're a 1 seed. They're getting blown out.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
But I like this idea of essentially like a Super Bowl at the end of the season.
Totally. Without a doubt. College football deserved something bigger than just the 4 teams that they were doing. And they had... Didn't they have the 1 year of the 8 teams, I think?
Yeah.
And then they went right to 12 here. So I think this is where you keep it, but you got to figure out how to do the seeding a little bit more accurately, I guess you could say. On the NBA hardwood now at the Garden, where Jalen Brunson scored 34 points to lead the Knicks to a 119-110 win over the Atlanta Hawks. Up next for the Knicks, they'll cross the East River for an interborough matchup with the Nets tonight. That action is set for a 7:30 p.m. tip-off. Finally on the ice in Elmont, the Islanders found the win column in the form of a 3-1 victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets. Coming up next for the Isles, they'll host the Philadelphia Flyers come Friday. Looking ahead to tonight's local NHL action, the Rangers are back at it at home, getting ready to welcome in the Ottawa Senators for a 7 p.m. puck drop. That is your Sports Know, and I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:20. Carrie Underwood was in Washington to sing America the Beautiful during the Trump inaugural yesterday, and no doubt you saw that her track didn't work. The musical track didn't work. So there was a moment where they came up to her and they kind of whispered in her ear. They said, "Hey, this is not working. Can you sing it a cappella?" And she did.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain.
You know, there's a lot of artists who would not have been able to do that a cappella, even though they're famous and can sing. They need that backtrack. Good for her that she was able to do so. If you believe it, there are reports afterwards that say she was pretty upset, and rightfully so, that the track didn't work. She said it was the only thing that went wrong during the entire inaugural was during her moment. And she was pretty upset, and I can understand that. It was her close-up at the inaugural, and she said she could have done better with that track behind her. President Biden departed the nation's capital. He gave his final remarks at Joint Base Andrews.
We're leaving office. We're not leaving the fight. You're smart. You're skilled. You're passionate. The country needs you again.
And then, of course, he had that slew of pardons on his way out. His family members, the January 6th committee, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases told The Hill that the White House approached him with the idea about a month ago and that Fauci did not ask for one. He added in a separate statement, "Let me be perfectly clear. I have committed no crime and there are no possible grounds for any allegation or threat of criminal investigation or prosecution of me. I'm Brian Shook."
And then you had the protesters in the street in Washington, here in New York.
Say it loud and say it clear. Immigrants are welcome here.
All right, the group, the People's Forum, leading this anti-Trump protest yesterday.
The people united will never be defeated.
You get the idea. And then, of course, here we are. It's going to be day 2. Day 1 brought so much. Immigrants living across the country concerned as President Trump has promised deportations beginning today. These executive orders threatening mass deportations. In Florida, there's about 300,000 Haitians living in southern Florida, some of them really uneasy and distressed about what may happen in the coming days and months.
This community is on edge. This community is in fear.
Governor Ron DeSantis, though, says he wants Florida to lead the nation in enforcing Trump's mass deportations. Family Action Network movement leader Paul Christian warns of what's to come.
This is absolutely crucial. We see the crisis that is happening. We see the crisis that is looming ahead.
And then you have the commissioner of Miami-Dade says she's concerned about law enforcement taking part in these deportations.
To deputize sheriffs and police officers to detain immigrants would be wrong. That will destabilize our communities.
And we may get a chance to see how this all rolls out today. According to the Wall Street Journal, the mass deportations will start in Chicago today, so we'll have to see if that actually plays out. Los Angeles officials warning of dangerous wildfire conditions still there. Here's Mayor Karen Bass.
Everyone needs to be on high alert. The National Weather Service has declared a particularly dangerous situation, the most urgent warning for wind and fire danger.
Red flag warning indicates low humidity, high winds. I can't believe they're having to deal with that again.
Los Angeles and partner firefighters are pre-deployed, and we asked Angelinos to be prepared in case they need to evacuate. If you're in an area where you have a warning, please be prepared to evacuate. And obviously, if you are under evacuation orders, please do not attempt to return.
And a local meteorologist saying that, it's not going to be great. The high winds are going to be bad.
Those winds are going to build from the northeast. And at those high ridge tops is where they'll be the most consistent. There we could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour. You go high in the San Gabriel Mountains, it could be even higher than that.
It's amazing that not all these fires are out. They're better contained, so that's the good news. Some people who've lost their homes finally able to go back and see what's left. Others get to see the damage done to their homes. Mayor Bass says the city and county fire personnel pre-deployed to strike fast if another wildfire breaks out in the coming days with these high winds. 5:25, the first hostages released by Hamas over the weekend are said to be in good health. Have you seen any of the videos that they've released of these hostages? One of them, hard to watch, as this woman walked into one of these hospitals after she left Gaza, and they put her on the phone with her father, and she starts screaming to her father, I've survived, I'm still alive. So I'm sure it'll be a tough time for these three women, but thank God they're on the right side of the border, freed as part of the ceasefire deal with Hamas. Correspondent Danielle Hamanjan has more.
She was seen with a big smile on her face, her hand bandaged after having lost 2 fingers when she was shot on October 7th, the day she was, of course, abducted as well. Her mom saying this morning, Emily is doing much better than any of us could have anticipated.
She's talking about 28-year-old Emily Damari. The reunions have been great, just hugs, lots of tears. Under the terms of this agreement, the first phase will involve the release of 33 hostages in exchange for 1,900 Palestinian prisoners. At least 2 Americans are among the hostages expected to be released in the coming days.
For the first time in a very long time, the skies over the Gaza Strip are clear and quiet. No sounds of Israeli drones or jets. How long will this last? Nobody really knows, but for now the focus is to take it an hour at a time, a day at a time. What we saw, certainly at a distance and on the surface, is that these women were doing relatively well on their feet, smiling. Of course, there'll be further tests done. There are psychological implications here after so much time in captivity. One can only imagine what it was like waking up this morning for the parents of these 3 hostages, not only knowing that they were alive, something they didn't know for 470 days, but to finally be able to hold them.
Yeah, it's amazing. The 3 women, by the way, say they were only told Sunday that they were being released. And, of course, they didn't believe it after spending so much time, some of them in tunnels being held by Hamas.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
Yes, that's me, 5:35. Good morning. It is Tuesday, January 21st. Your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. A mix of sun and clouds today. The high's only going to be 20. Tonight and overnight, clear, low 11. Yikes. And then Wednesday, sunshine, a tad bit warmer, high 21. If you are walking out the door with us right now, we're seeing some of the lowest temperatures of the season. It's 13 and partly cloudy in Amityville out on Long Island. It's 11 and partly cloudy in Clifton over in New Jersey. And it is 12 and clear right outside our Midtown studios. Now, of course, it's winter, so it's supposed to be cold. But everybody trying to figure out how to keep warm over these next next 72 hours or so. By the end of the week, we'll be back around 30, which we'll probably feel after these couple days really quite warm, especially for this guy, tow truck driver, trying to keep warm today.
Fingers get numb, feet get cold, and it gets rough. Move quick. Again, we got, hand warmers and stuff like that, but for the most part, I do move pretty quickly, so I'm back in the truck and not freezing.
So this code blue is in effect across the city through today. I imagine they'll reinstitute it again tonight. If you see someone homeless outside, a person in distress, call 311. Police will come and help them because you don't want them to die from exposure. That is the New Yorkers who are walking out early this morning, dressing in all kinds of layers just to keep warm.
My winter boots. I've got a jacket under this jacket, and then I have my hat.
Of course, the risk obviously is hypothermia on a really cold night if you are out for hours on end. Mayor Adams says the city's ready for the cold.
Check on neighbors, make sure that they know about any heating conditions, that they can call 311 to report the lack of heat in their buildings. But we have to be here for each other.
MTA, of course, is when it gets really cold, is worried about equipment getting iced over. They're saying they're de-icing their equipment, so the subways, everything is working okay. The Emergency Management Commissioner of the city says this code blue issued to help the homeless to get them off the streets.
These temperatures are a very serious concern, especially for vulnerable populations. We will be working closely with our Department of Social Services to ensure that homeless New Yorkers have access to shelter.
Yeah, so the good news is it's just a couple days. And, of course, it's winter, so it's supposed to be cold. WABC News Time, 5:39. The first 100 additional NYPD cops to patrol inside trains under Governor Hochul's new plan. They were on the job for the first time last night. So if you rode the trains between 9 last night and 5 this morning, there were 2 cops on every single subway train. And, of course, for the most part, riders say this is a good thing. Here was the governor on this.
We're not doing anything with the 2,500 police officers who are already there patrolling the system. This is to add on top of that.
Yeah, so by the end of the month, it'll be 300, guaranteeing that 2 cops will ride every overnight subway train as they try to improve public safety. And riders last night who saw the cops on their trains were pretty happy to see them.
At least at night we'll know that, things will be safer. And they just need more places for people with mental illness to be able to live in and take their medicine and things like that, because we need more help with people with mental illness here.
Absolutely. That's why I don't take it after 9 p.m.
Yeah, well, that's the fear, right, of taking it after 9 p.m., that there'd be violence. $77 million, by the way, it's going to cost in overtime to phase in these officers to ride the train overnight.
I think anybody who's been a New Yorker for long enough can tell you there's certainly times where you're just kind of tucking your chin down, ignoring what's going on around you, but I don't think this is the solution.
I definitely think something should be done. I for sure agree that there needs to be programs in place, or somebody needs to come and kind of help take people off the train, because I encounter it all the time.
Yeah, so nearly 150 trains run overnight, so that is a lot of officers if you're planning to have 2 cops on every single one of them.
You see how I'm positioned here so I won't get pushed off the train, and when the train comes, that's when I go to the other side.
Even in the daytime, I try to travel in the car with the conductor, a little safer.
Yeah, high-profile crimes. Of course, you'll remember the 45-year-old man pushed in front of an oncoming train. That was New Year's Eve. And then the awful one with a woman set on fire out in Queens. Now, neither of these incidents actually happened overnight, but the data indicates that overnight hours is when strap hangers are the most afraid to ride the subways. So that's why they've added these cops. A room full of people erupting into applause. We were checking in with a bunch of inauguration parties across the tri-state yesterday. Some of them went well into the evening, celebrating Donald Trump's return to the White House. Here was one out on Long Island.
I am feeling vindicated, happy,
very excited. We waited a long time for this.
The vibe is good, and just we deserve to celebrate.
Yeah, despite the fact that it was awfully cold and you had the snow, people braved those conditions to get to watch parties across the tri-state.
It's not just a Republican victory, it's an American victory.
Fun to be with people, feel the same way that we do.
So many people wanted to be a part of the inaugural events, but couldn't make it down to Washington for work, for weather, for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's a bunch of inaugural parties even in my neighborhood. Mayor Adams abruptly canceling appearances yesterday at Martin Luther King Jr. Day events, including that big one that takes place at BAM every year, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, to attend President Trump's inauguration. Apparently, he accepted a last-minute invitation. Now, this is what his people are saying anyway, that Steve Witkoff, the president's envoy to the Middle East, invited Adams to the ceremony last minute. When I say last minute, invited him Monday at 1 a.m. And the mayor, apparently, this is what his office says, got into a car and was driven down to Washington starting at 3 a.m. so he could be there in time for the inauguration. Now, he actually wasn't in the Capitol Rotunda. He watched from one of the congressional offices. Adams being criticized back here in New York for going down to Washington, of course, in very blue New York. You had Jumaane Williams, the public advocate, saying he can't believe that Mayor Adams drove all the way down to Washington for the inauguration and skipped out on the MLK events here in the city.
Every time I think I can't be more stunningly disappointed with this mayor, he says, yes, you can.
So critics, of course, questioning whether it was in his self-interest to be part of the inauguration, that he might be looking for a pardon. Of course, the mayor facing bribery charges, a trial this April. Mike Blake, he's a Democrat running for the assembly, and he says shame on Adams for skipping the MLK events and going to Washington.
Eric Adams had a chance to do a meeting with President Biden to address the migrant crisis. He canceled on that to rush back home because his friends were being raided. Eric Adams today decided to cancel on New Yorkers because Donald Trump beckoned for him to come down. He is making it very clear. What Eric cares more about is making sure that he does not go to jail.
Yeah, he had to know that this would come if he skipped those MLK events. City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams, she also called out the mayor at that event at the Brooklyn Academy of Music that he skipped out on. She actually talked about that at the event in front of the audience.
Some that should be here celebrating Dr. King with us in this room have chosen to go to Washington to celebrate Felon 47.
Yeah, last week the mayor met with Donald Trump, now President Trump, in Florida, where they said they spent an hour discussing immigration and other issues. They didn't tell us what those other issues were. 5:45, let's head over to the 77 WABC Sports Desk. And here's Justin Ella.
Thank you, Noam Laden. We'll start with college football and your national championship game recap from Atlanta, where the Ohio State Buckeyes prevailed 34-23 against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to reach the top of the college football mountain. And their sixth national title in school history, the first in a decade for the Buckeyes. The championship victory makes OSU the champion of the sport's first 12-team playoff, just as they were champions of its first 4-team tournament a decade ago. Buckeyes were on cruise control, and then suddenly Notre Dame came to life, trailing 31-7. ND scored 2 touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions to make it a one-score game late in the fourth quarter. But alas, Ohio State was the better team. The Buckeyes outgained Notre Dame 445 yards to 308. Will Howard completed his first 13 passes and never really got stopped, and then Ohio State punted a grand total of 1 time throughout. The Buckeyes rolled through 4 games in the new expanded playoff. What great timing for Ohio State that the tournament swelled to a dozen teams in a year it didn't even play for the Big Ten title by an average score of 36-21 over those 4 games. Ohio State was seeded 8th, but the seeding turned out to be pretty much meaningless. The worst seed won every game in the quarterfinal and semifinal rounds, and the Buckeyes dominated in this title game showdown of number 7 and number 8. On the NBA hardwood now at the Garden.
I think it's tough to I didn't mean to interrupt you,
go for
but
it.
I did.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I think it's just tough to seed these schools because there's so many of them, and their programs are so vastly different from each other.
Of course.
I don't know how you make that any better than they did.
And how do you seed Ohio State higher than 8 when they didn't even play for their conference's champion?
Right. Exactly.
So you got to take, obviously have to take into account conference championships. I think if you win your conference, that should automatically make you like a top half seeded team.
What about toughness of schedule? Should they incorporate that?
Of course, but that's always been an issue for college football. That's not even throughout the different conferences. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are conferences that are playing an extremely weak schedule throughout, like Boise State, for instance, wasn't playing great teams all season. But,
and then they get ranked high.
Right, and then they get ranked high, and that's, you don't see them here anymore.
Yeah. And the same holds true, by the way, for basketball. Same thing.
Exactly, right. So, I don't know if there's a solution for it, and I certainly don't have one. But That's why I don't have their jobs as the executives of the NCAA.
That's why you're just reading about them as opposed
exactly. In professional sports, here, on the Garden on the hardwood, Jalen Brunson scored 34, and the Knicks went on to win 119-110 over the Atlanta Hawks. Up next for them, they'll cross East River for an interborough matchup with the Nets tonight. That action set for a 7:30 p.m. tip-off, and on the ice in Elmont, the Islanders found the win column in the form of a 3-1 victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets. Coming up next for them, they'll host the Flyers come Friday. Looking ahead to tonight's ice hockey action, the Rangers are back at it at home, getting ready to welcome in the Ottawa Senators for a 7 p.m. puck drop. That's your Sports Know, man. I'm Justin Ellick on 77 WABC.
WABC News Time 5:50. The inauguration of President Trump did not exactly give a lot of New Yorkers the warm and fuzzies.
Protesters took to the streets of New York City with Donald Trump back in the White House. A large crowd braved those freezing temperatures to attend a rally organized by the group The People's Forum. In Washington Square Park, demonstrators called for defending the rights of workers, immigrant families, women, and the LGBTQ plus community. And that coming after Trump enacted a national emergency concerning the southern border. He also said the White House will acknowledge just 2 genders. James Flippin for 77 WABC News.
Yeah, speaking of those 2 genders, among President Trump's 100 executive orders he signed Monday, rolling back protections of transgender people, ending diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the federal government.
It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female.
Yeah, so that not warmly received by some back here in New York, including Julie Gray Owen. She's the executive director of Gender Equality New York. Her and her wife, Barbara, upset by this.
It's not based on any kind of scientific knowledge. It's just an emotional attack on a small community of people.
Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, who was in Washington for the inauguration, applauding the move by the president.
I think it was stupid and dangerous for biological males to play with females in organized sports. I think it's stupid to allow biological males to take a shower in a women's locker room.
The executive orders will impact federal hiring, training, and passport applications. Taxpayer money will not be used to fund transition services. A small number of federal prison inmates had gender-affirming surgery. Now, its effect will be less so here in New York, less of an impact in New York, where Gender X is allowed on a driver's license, that type of thing. 5:52, Governor Murphy penning a letter to President Trump regarding congestion pricing, say it's an area where the 2 of them can find common ground. He reminded President Trump that he previously said he would terminate congestion pricing during his first week back in office. What are we, 2 weeks in now to congestion pricing? Murphy says he's open to congestion pricing in concept, but he says the way that New York has rolled it out is a scheme and not well designed, not adequately studied. So he's asking the president to get rid of congestion pricing. Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis, Staten Island Congresswoman, she has asked the president to do the same thing and suggested last week that might happen.
He wants to kill congestion pricing. We are working with him now to find the legal avenue for him to do so. I believe he can.
Now, the question is, will he do it in the first week? Murphy, other opponents of congestion pricing, have long said they're not giving up their fight, even though their lawsuits have yet to stop the program. 5:53. While we're talking about New Jersey, drones can be flown again in parts of the Garden State following the expiration of several bans.
The FAA temporarily banned drones in dozens of Garden State towns late last year, citing security reasons. Rampant drone sightings began in November, including over sensitive locations like President Trump's home in Bedminster. The drone no-fly order expired in 22 towns Friday, 28 more over the weekend, and many of which are all near power stations, rail lines, and larger cities like Jersey City or Camden. James Flippin for 77 WABC News.
There was a deadly stabbing yesterday inside a Queens mental health facility.
Police were called to Hazel House. That's a 52-bed inpatient mental health program on the campus of the Creedmoor Psychiatric Center in Queens Village around 10:30 Monday morning. They found Ronald Giacopelli's body face down with stab wounds to his neck and lower back. The 63-year-old's roommate there, 23-year-old David Zhang, was charged with his murder. Other residents say the two were actually good friends, but that Zhang often failed to take his medication. State Office of Mental Health says it's working with the NYPD in their investigation. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
Governor Hochul, one of the many taking part in MLK events yesterday. She was at BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music. That's the event we were telling you that Mayor Adams skipped out on to go to the inauguration. She was talking about raising up New Yorkers on MLK today and what seemed to be a veiled reference to the new Trump administration down in D.C.
Whatever comes our way for the next 4 years, we are ready. We are ready to stand up and channel the spirit of Dr. King.
Hochul also talked about raising up people in the spirit of MLK by offering free tuition at community colleges. She says her fiscal 2025 budget prioritizes struggling New Yorkers.
You have a child under the age of 4, $1,000 back in your pocket because I know the diapers and the formula and everything's so expensive.
Yeah, a lot of these lawmakers yesterday taking swipes at Mayor Adams for missing out, skipping out on those events yesterday. 5:55. Do you remember? I can remember this from when I was a kid, and I can't remember when they went away, but there were always chestnuts that you could buy. They were, when you see these guys on the street, they were selling the carts, they'd have the hot dogs, they'd have the pretzels, and then there'd be this like little tin where they were selling chestnuts. And by the way, they never looked very appealing. So now New Yorkers trying to bring chestnuts back to those street carts. And he says they taste better than you might think. He has founded this group. It's called the Great Chestnut Experiment.
And we're sharing chestnuts that are locally grown, working with farmers in New York and the surrounding areas to bring chestnuts back to New Yorkers here.
So over the winter market at Bryant Park, the Christmas market there, he started doing this. He said, let's see if anybody will like these chestnuts. So he had them in a cone, and they put sort of sauces on them. You could put like chocolate sauce, honey mustard, and apparently people liked them.
It's a warm chestnut beverage. Tastes like the winter season in a cup.
All right, I mean, I'm willing to try them, but boy, they never looked appetizing on those food cards.
Our whole vision is to really support farmers so they can plant more chestnut trees and restore our food system to be full of forest and trees.
Yes, the business was so successful in that Christmas market and Bryant Market, you'll start seeing chestnuts now on those food carts again.